Good morning, I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
President Bongbong Marcos voiced anger over a non-existent 55 million river wall in Baliwag, Bulacan.
Senator Ping Lacson bears what he calls systematic plunder in flood management programs, exposing billions lost to ghost projects and kickbacks.
ICC prosecutor Karim Khan denies any conflict of interest, rejecting calls for his disqualification from the Duterte case probe.
Online gambling transactions in the country dropped by 50%. That was days after the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas ordered the delinking of gambling sites from e-wallets.
First in the news, President Bongbong Marcos admits that his disappointment over the dismal state of flood control projects has turned to anger. This comes after he visited a project in Barangay Piel, Baliwag, Bulacan on Wednesday. But the president saw nothing, not even a drop of cement. 55.7 million pesos of public funds were supposedly used for the concrete river wall project.
Ay, nako. Talaga naman. Thank you.
Disappointed,
Thank you.
sir?
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
disappointed.
Extremely. More than disappointed. I'm getting very angry. It's what's happening here. Hindi naman. Paano naman? Wala talaga. 220 meters, 55 billion. Completed ang record ng public works. Walang ginawa, kahit isang araw hindi nagtrabaho, wala. Wala kang makita, puntahan ninyo, wala kayong makita kahit na ano. Tuloy-tuloy ang pagbaha doon sa kabila. So, yes.
Sir? Sir?
If all of these projects were properly executed and implemented, ang laki nang nawala na problema sana sa atin at sa mga taong bayan, at saka mas magiging maayos hanggang irrigation, hanggang water supply, fresh water supply for household. Pero ito yung ginagawa nila, talagang nakakapinsala pa sa mga local residents. So yes, I'm not disappointed, I'm angry.
Reported completed, paid in full, but never started. The chief executive had no doubt this is a ghost project that is haunting a flood-prone community. Marcos believes that what happened in this particular project is tantamount to economic sabotage.
Wala kaming makita na kahit isang hollow block, isang ng simento, walang equipment dito. Lahat itong project na ito, ghost project. Walang ginawa na trabaho dito. Nakakalungkot, pero ang dami pang iba na sa aming palagay, ganito rin. Na ganitong kalaki na project, 220 meters, 55 million ang kontrata. Walang nagawa. Kahit ano, walang nagawa.
Senator Ping Lacson has exposed what he describes a systematic plunder in the government's flood control programs, alleging that billions of pesos were lost to ghost projects and kickbacks. Here's the report.
For ordinary Filipinos, every flood drowns not just their homes, but their lives and livelihoods. But for some, every surge of floodwaters becomes an opportunity to pocket millions from government coffers. A shocking revelation and a staggering exposé on corruption unveiled by Senator Ping Lacson. A long list of ghost flood control projects funded by government, yet with no trace of actual construction.
Halos pare-pareho ang pattern kung paano minamasaker ng mga kawatan ang pondo ng bayan. Mailan pa ngang proyekto, hindi man lang nagtira para sa taong bayan. Ang tawag ng Pangulong Marcos dito, guni-guni o ghost projects.
According to Lacson, corruption is systematic, carefully divided among key players. This is how taxpayers' money is safe enough. For example, a project worth 100 million pesos. After taxes and insurance, only 82 million remains. 8 to 10% goes as kickback to the DPWH district engineer, 5 to 6% to the Bids and Awards Committee, up to 1% to a commission and audit official. and up to 6% as a so-called parking fee or royalty for the politician controlling the district. When the cuts are done, only 35 to 40 million is left for the actual project.
20 to 25% ang karaniwang napupunta sa funder o project proponent na politiko. Ang matitirang pondo para sa pagpapatayo ng proyekto ay napakaswerte ng umabot sa 40%.
Lacson's team inspected questionable projects on the ground. In Arayat, Pampanga, the same dike has been repeatedly funded and repeatedly damaged. In La Union, the Mawang River Basin Flood Management Program ballooned to nearly 1 billion pesos under the 2024 budget, despite being allocated just 100 million in the National Expenditure Program. In Oriental Mindoro, a congressman allegedly took ownership of a project using unprogrammed funds. The lawmaker in question was 1st District Representative Arnan Panaligan.
Masalimuot ang proseso ng paggamit ng unprogrammed appropriations under the Special Purpose Fund. Ano kaya ang taglay na agimat ni Congressman?
But Lacson said Bulacan is the most notorious for kickbacks and flood control. In Malolos, one project built back in 2018 was still funded again in 2021, 2023, and 2024. Another was rebuilt in 2023 but with substandard.
Paulit-ulit ang pagpopondo kahit gawa na. Bagong style ito, Mr. President. Ilan pa kayang flood control projects ang ganito?
Lacson also named former district engineers Henry Alcantara and Bryce Hernandez, who he claimed valued money more than public service.
Sa District Engineering Office na ito, sa ilalim ng pamumuno ng dalawang nabanggit na opisyal, para sa taong 2024, 28 proyekto ang pare-pareho ang pondo kahit magkakaiba ang specs, disenyo at haba. Ang isa sa kanila ay nakakapagpatalo ng 100 milyon sa isang kasino dito sa Metro Manila.
In Hagonoy, another scheme emerged, the so-called distinct budget. Identical project cost, different projects, like a 77.9 million peso riverbank protection structure, priced exactly the same as another flood control project under the same contractor, Darcy and Anna Builders. Projects that vanished like ghosts. And not just the projects, sometimes even the contractors. Lacson's team went to the registered addresses of these firms, only to find a gym and an e-payment store instead. Another contractor, Wawa Builders, was tagged for a ghost project in Barangay San Nicolas.
Sa historical imagery ng lugar na walang nabago simula pa noong 2017. So, anong tinayo ng Wawa Builders noong 2023? Di wala. Wow na wow ang wawaw.
Lacson said he is ready to submit evidence to back up all his revelations.
Very detailed talaga yung ginawang
report.
expose. Kumbaga, we can say that. Doon sa ginawa na included in the privileged speech of Senator Panfilo Lacson yesterday sa Senate. Actually, medyo may sakit pa siya na nakita mo naman through his voice, pero nairaos naman yung report na yon na kaya ngayon, yan ang laman ng balita natin dahil may mga pinangalanan siyang people involved. One of which is yung isang congressman nga sa Oriental Mindoro, si Representative Panaligan, which is he categorically denies na may involvement siya. Saying na, alam mo na, yung lagi natin pinag-uusapan dito na finger pointing na sa Congress, wala naman daw silang kinalaman dito. When in fact, we can look at DPWH, contractors, and other people involved but not them.
Actually, ang best summary dito yung video ni PBBM. Sabi niya, kahit yung may buntong hininga na lang sa nakaturo, kahit isang hollow block man lang daw, sa 55 million peso project na pader, walang nakita, pero tagged as completed. Isipin mo yan, 55 million, but when you take a look at the site, not even 1% completed. So, that begs the question, ano nangyayari?
Yeah.
Who monitors these projects? How many more? We're only talking about flood control.
And we're only talking about yung under the PBBM administration.
And only flood control. Could you imagine, lawakan pa natin ang pagtingin natin dito, no? Administrations back and modern flood control. Ang dami sigurong proyekto na nakatag completed. So, ano ba ang structure ngayon ng government with regards to auditing Kasi ang COA, they only audit yung paperwork, yung financial, pero yung physical aspect ng isang proyekto, ano yung basis mo of auditing? Tapos I remember sinasabi ni PBBM, mahirap daw i-audit or inspect ang project na nakatag as yung mga dredging, kaya ayaw niya ng dredging. How do you measure daw dredging?
Totoo naman.
Anong sasabihin sa'yo? Mag-dive ka sa ilalim ng river para tignan mo yung lalim ng
Kung gaano kalalim yung dinredge
Oo,
nila.
kaya nga minsan sinasabi ni Pangulo as much as possible kung kaya ng ibang project imbis na dredging, yun na lang. 'Di ba? Kasi mas makikita yung output like itong river wall, walang wall.
Yes, alam mo na, pero tagged as complete, diba? So kaya nga
Galing.
sinasabi natin dito, maganda yung nangyayari ngayon, nagkakaroon ng investigation, but at the end of the day, what we want is to hold people accountable. Pag wala tayong makita na puro salita lang to, wala tayong makita na makakasuhan at makukulong dahil dito, all of this are for nothing. Pero ito pa sinasabi ni Senator Panfilo Lacson, no, pinakita niya yung, kumbaga parang yung matrix ng scheme ng corruption. So, kunyari daw sa 100 million na budget, kunyari sa isang flood control project, 82 million ang matitira doon kung papayagan natin yung mga legal na paraan na binabawas, tax, etc. Pero ang nangyayari daw, natitira na lang doon at least mga 35 to 40 million because of several mga, alam mo na, mga hugot, di ba?
Yeah,
Kung sino-sino man yan. 8 to 10%, ayan, tingnan natin. 8 to 10% officials of the Department of Public Works and Highways, yan daw mga kinukuha, according dun sa report. 2 to 3%, kinukuha naman daw ng District Engineer Office, kung meron mga excess pa from the contractor's profit. 5 to 6% members naman daw ng Bids and Awards Committee. 0.5 to 0.1% commission on audit, kasama yan At 5 to 6%, ito yung lagi nang sinasabi na babanggit ni Senator Panfilo Lacson, yung passing through or parking fee. Ito yung tinatawag niya yung mga royalty given to politicians in control of the district. No? 20 to 25% funder or project opponent and politician. So wala nang natitira. 'Di ba? So talagang yung moderate your greed na tinatawag dito na pinag-uusapan natin before. Dito ma-apply yun no? Hindi kayo talagang makikita dun sa project ninyo na wala nangyayari dahil talagang wala na natitira dun sa pera
More than the details kasi, okay, it's good to have yung mga detailed reports like that.
Yes, of course.
But more than that, we should actually have physical reports, physical inspections, more than numbers. Numbers will only go as far as COA audits and COA reports. Yung actual, I know, but I'm saying to actually look. Kasi isipin mo, kung titingin ka ng report, makikita mo completed ang project, 55 million, pader, okay.
No, yung binasa ko kanina sa'yo, yun yung sinasabi, allegedly,
I know.
upon investigation of Senator Panfilo Lacson, na nagiging scheme of corruption.
Yes, I'm
under
saying,
these projects.
but just to simplify lang for our viewers, it's so easy to see corruption going to the actual site and saying, wala ang project. Or kung titignan mo,
tagged as complete, pero wala.
or kung may project, tama ba yung value, di ba? Yung semento na hinawakan ni PBBM, pulbos.
Yeah.
Pero nakalagay doon up to standard based on bidding parameters.
Kaya, do you remember nung
Painit na ulo.
kausap natin yung mojo natin, si Julie Baiza, I asked him yung unang day pa lang na naglabas ng initial report si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos. I asked her, would you know kung mismong si Pangulong Bongbong Marcos will visit some of these anomalous flood control projects? Hindi pa daw sure. Pero yun na nga, ito na, ginagawa na niya. Kahit na
Visiting most of them.
Oo, most of them. 9,000 mahigit yon. Pero syempre, titignan dyan, ano yung mga most flooded areas, yung mas maraming mga budget na inilaan for that specific area. Yan yung mga makikita natin na maaaring bisitahin talaga para makita kung talagang merong mga flood
Yung mga
control
site na may talagang gahaman sa pangangurapot.
Diba?
Pinuntahan niya talaga. Ay, nako. Alright, let's move on. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong has responded to what he believes were barbed remarks aimed at him by late Representative Richard Gomez. Magalong said it saddened him recalling that he and Gomez were once friends. Gomez earlier took a swipe at an unnamed mayor whom he accused of posturing as clean while criticizing congressmen. According to Gomez, he wasn't surprised that this mayor had accused lawmakers of corruption, but stressed that if the mayor had issues with one congressman, he should not drag everyone else into it.
Ay sa tingin ko siguro baka ako yung tinutukoy. Kaya nakakalungkot lang. Magkaibigan kami. Kung sanay ka sa dark, sa madilim na lugar, mahirap ka talaga makakita ng maliwanag. Kaya ako na lang.
Meanwhile, Vice President Sara Duterte is once again taking aim at the Marcos administration, accusing House leaders of being behind questionable flood control projects. Here's the report.
Not only contractors but even members of Congress themselves should be investigated over the questionable flood control projects. That's the sharp criticism coming directly from Vice President Sara Duterte.
Mga contractors ay mga tauhan din sila ng mga members of the House of Representatives. 2 tao lang ang nagde-decide sa budget ng Pilipinas. Yun ay si Martin Romualdez at si Zaldico. At yung mga kasamahan nila o mga grupo nila, kasama din nila yon sa paghati-hati noong budget ng Pilipinas.
The Vice President made that remarks in Paris, France, where she met with supporters of her family. Even abroad, Duterte continued her attacks on the Marcos administration. She questioned the President Bongbong Marcos' own expose of so-called shady contractors, calling it suspicious.
Nabanggit namin yon kay BBM na ganun ang ginawa, pero noon ay wala siyang reaction. Tapos bigla ngayon, meron na siyang reaction. Paniwala ko, pinaghahandaan niya lang yung excuse niya para sa susunod na baha.
Her brother, Davao City Acting Mayor Baste Duterte, echoed her sentiments, saying the president's action looks more like image building than real solution.
Baka ginagawa mo lang platform mo na ganun ka, and yet wala ka namang totoong ginagawa talaga. Kinasuhan niya na yun sana kung talagang totoo yung mga sinasabi niya.
The palace and the House of Representatives have yet to issue a reply. But Malacanang did hit back at VP Sara's claims that the Philippines education system has been left behind by the other countries.
Binigyan po siya ng pagkakataon, pinagtiwalaan siya ng Pangulo since 2022 hanggang 2024 para maging DepEd Secretary. 2 taon halos na siya ay dapat nagtrabaho. Kung ano man ang kanyang nireklamo, dapat natupad na po sana niya ito sa kanyang panahon. Ang pagtitiwalang ito ay sa kanyang reklamo ngayon, nagre-reflect lamang na bilang siya ay naging DepEd Secretary ay a complete failure.
Alam mo, ngayon naglalabasan na lahat ng mga politiko, no? Kay Sigoma, pointing at Mayor Magalong, all these older congressmen attacking each other, saying they're aghast at all this corruption. Alam mo, decades ago pa, when you talk about corruption, pork barrel o si Kong may ganito. Oo, tapos ang sinabi naman nila sa pork barrel, hindi naman kami ang actual naghahawak ng pera. Oo nga, hindi nga kayo yung actual naghahawak ng pera. Pero kayo nag-a-appoint ng funds for a project.
Congressional insertion.
It's called an insertion. Tapos, ang usapan ng mga, ito ang base sa parang report ni Senator Lacson, is papasok mo sa insertion mo yan, and then kung na-approve yung project na yan, yung kumpanya na ni-nominate mo to take hold of that project will say, pinasok niyo yung budget dahil kay Kong ganito. Meron ka dyan. Diba?
Yan yung mga, sabi nila, open secret.
Open secret long time ago, decades ago. Pero ngayon, I'm sure a lot of the politicians who are claiming that they are shocked know about this. Pero ngayon, nag-react sila dahil the President of the Philippines makes it part of his battle cry right now in last 3 years to go after these people. Ngayon, lahat kayo kumakahol.
Kaya ako sinasabi ko, it's now really the time to get those people accountable, hold those people accountable, and hopefully end this generational greed.
Sabi nga nila, bakit hindi alam ni PBBM yan long time ago? Some people will say, alam ni PBBM yan long time ago. I guess kasi ito an open secret.
He was once a congressman.
Yeah, and senator. But the question is the mere fact, which other president ran after specifically contractors and stopping short of blaming congressmen
Pero yun nga
for
sinasabi
corruption.
nila, let's not just focus on contractors, 'di ba? Kasi sabi nila, itong mga contractors na to, hindi to gagalaw without the compass of higher ups or higher power, or higher entity.
Ang sasabihin ko lang sa mga tao nagsasabi nun, relax lang kayo. Alam mo, kung nagbabasa kayo ng 48 laws of power, how do you get the big fish? By squeezing the small fish.
The small fish.
So, ipigain nyo ng
Pero sabi nila,
Kasi
no?
hindi, pipigain nyo yung contractor. Pag ipit na ang contractor sa isang
Then they will
kaso,
talk.
uy, sasabihin, teka lang, ang nagpasok ng budget si Kong ayan.
Pwede na.
O syempre, di ba,
Pwede.
this admin won't put their punches out in the open kung anong style. Ngayon, pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. Diba?
Tignan natin. Pero sabi nga nila sa ibang bansa like in the US, kapag ikaw daw ang kontraktor ng isang proyekto ng gobyerno, inilalagay pa daw yan sa website nila.
Yes,
Na pinagmamalaki na, okay, we are part of this national country's project, ganyan, itong kontraktor na to. Dito, nahihiya ka na maging kontraktor kasi ka nasa dawit dito. And of course, a lot of people are asking also, bakit hindi rin tignan ng maigi itong mga taga-DPWH? Diba? Kaya nga nagkaroon din ng usapin na baka daw tanggalin na sa pwesto ito si Secretary Bonoan. But of course, he said na buo pa rin naman ang tiwala sa kanya ng Pangulo.
Let's see. Habang humaba yung investigation.
Kasi talaga, it takes a village to corrupt. Sabi nga nila, it takes a village. Napakaraming
Anong village?
mga schemes.
Takes a whole country.
The whole country pala. Okay, sige. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. Oriental Mindoro Representative Arnan Panaligan denied involvement in flood control projects in his district. He said he was not their proponent and had no ties with the contractors and did not receive any kickbacks. Here is the report.
Oriental Mindoro 1st District Representative Arnan Panaligan expressed sadness over his inclusion in Senator Panfilo Lacson's privileged speech on alleged irregularities in flood control projects.
Nakakalungkot naman at tayo ay nadawit sa speech na yon na hindi tayo nabigyan ng pagkakataon na makakuha yung ating side,
In an interview with Storycon, Panaligan said that while flood control projects exist in his province due to its vulnerability to flooding, he had no role in identifying, designing, or awarding the contracts.
Ito, merong dumating na malaking amount na flood control projects starting 2023. Pero lahat pong yan ay ang DPWH ang nag-identify. Ang DPWH ang nagplano, gumawa ng program of works. Ang DPWH din ang nag-bid at nag-award sa contractors na mga proyektong yan.
He stressed that he was not a proponent of any flood control projects in his district.
Pero mga flood control na yan, hindi namin, ako sa experience ko, wala itong pinabago dyan. Kasi nga nandun na yan kasi kung babagoy mo, para sa mo idadalhin, sa mo ililipat na lugar, nandun na yan
Panaligan also denied having personal ties with contractors mentioned in Lacson's speech, adding that he never received any form of kickback from the projects.
As a matter of policy, I do not talk or socialize with contractors. Kapag meron akong concern sa proyekto, katulad nga nung nakita ko nasira, ang highways na kinakausap ko lang, ang highways na sinusuratan ko because they are the implementing agency. Silang concern dyan.
In a separate interview with A Big Story, the lawmaker also pushed for further investigation into such projects.
Mali ang structural design or tama ang design pero mali ang implementation. Kaya dapat talaga ay magkaroon ng malalim na investigasyon dyan at ipaliwanag ng DPWH Regional Office kung bakit nagkaganyan ang proyekto.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Lawmakers at the House of Representatives opened key sessions tackling pressing issues on housing and agriculture. Mobile journalist Arles de los Santos has the report.
Filipinos still lack access to adequate, affordable, and sustainable housing. That is the hook of the inaugural meeting of the 20th Congress's Committee on Housing and Urban Development. In her opening statement, Committee Chairperson Representative Maria Victoria Copilar emphasized the urgent need to ensure every Filipinos live in a safe, inclusive, and climate-resilient communities. She adds that housing and urban development is more than just infrastructure. It's about giving families the foundation to thrive. It can be recalled that in February 2025, the UN Habitat estimates that housing need in the Philippines is projected to increase from 6.5 million to 22 million by 2040. Popular also noted that the Urban Development and Housing Act, or UDHA, needs to be reviewed to ensure it remains responsive to evolving needs of Filipino communities.
At let's face it, ang housing is not only the problem of ISF or informal settlers. Housing ay problema rin ng mga empleyado ng gobyerno, empleyado na nagtatrabaho sa kumpanya na kailangan din ng housing program, ng housing projects na decent and affordable. So, and housing, it could be vertical and horizontal. So we all want to integrate all those laws and to come up with the National Housing Code of the Philippines that will address the different housing needs of different sectors.
Presumptive cause to the problem is urban migration, made worse by a decline in housing production due to a tedious regulatory and approval procedure, a heavy reliance on private sector investment, and insufficient funding for housing. In the same meeting, a number of priority bills were discussed and approved. On the same day, the House Committee on Agriculture and Food held an organizational meeting and immediately began discussing important bills for the rice industry. Led by its chairperson, Representative Mark Enverga, the Department of Agriculture presented the key challenges of the agri-fishery sector, such as the low productivity, delayed infrastructure development, and weak forward linkages, as well as growing impact of climate-related disasters. The committee also discussed the adverse effect of the enactment of RA 11203, also known as the Rice Tariffication Law, that, as per resource persons, significantly reduced the NFA's role to buffer stocking for emergencies, removing the agency's power in regulating market price and supply stabilization. Representatives from the agriculture sector aired sentiments on the worsening derailment caused by the law.
Simula po nang ipatupad ang Rice Tariffication Law noong February 2019, grabe ang epekto sa mga magsasaka ng palay, industriya ng bigas, at sa partikular, luging-lugi ang magsasaka. Pakinggan po namin si President Marcos, hindi naluluging magsasaka. Fake news, hindi po ito totoo. Kung nabili ng 8 to 10 pesos, kinuwenta po namin, lugi kami ng 28 to 32,000 pesos per hectare.
Accessible housing as well as food sufficiency remains an unsolved puzzle under the Marcos Jr. administration. Both problems that's been passed on from one administration to another that makes living difficult for many Filipinos. Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos, we are One News.
Now in other news, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan has denied any conflict of interest and rejected calls for his disqualification from the investigation into the Duterte administration's drug war. Khan acknowledged that he previously joined a legal team representing victims who sought an ICC investigation, but said his role was limited to reviewing and presenting submissions, not conducting investigations or interviewing witnesses. He later withdrew from the matter and stressed that his current responsibilities as a prosecutor are entirely different. Khan maintained that his impartiality remains intact and said he will continue to review his position while leading the case. Former President Rodrigo Duterte's lawyers has sought his removal, alleging an irreconcilable conflict of interest.
Joining us now is Attorney Cristina Conti, ICC Assistant to Counsel. Attorney, thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, she will help us break down Prosecutor Karim Khan's denial of conflict of interest and what it means for the drug war investigation. So given your role, attorney, at the ICC, how do you view Prosecutor Karim Khan's denial of any conflict of interest in this case?
Well, it's simply factual. He's stating what he has done before and what is his, in a sense, tentative role as lawyer for the quote-unquote victims, apparently it is in furtherance of the investigation. And so, because of his factual presentation, for us, we're also convinced that there is no conflict of interest. From another point of view, there was also this question as to whether a lawyer for the victim and a lawyer of the prosecution would have material conflict of interest, because essentially they would have the same goal, to have the accused convicted and eventually ordered to pay reparations. And so now it's clear, and even Kaufman himself seems to have been convinced in his in his previously recent filing last week, I think, he said that he now poses no objection or is not questioning the impartiality of the judge. Or rather, of Karimkan.
Okay, kasi baka you could orient us a little, no? Kasi although we're familiar with yung Philippine judicial system, iba kasi ang framework ng ICC, no? So, initially, when the Duterte's defense team were saying na may conflict of interest, a lot of people parang na-confused. It's because, as you mentioned, one and the same naman to eh. I mean, that side is all... Yes. So, ano yung argument, do you think? What argument did they have that they thought that they could, that yung petition nila could succeed?
Well, their argument was that the victim's legal team and that the prosecution are separate groups.
Okay.
Pinaghiwalay talaga yan sa ICC. Kung sa Pilipinas, ang tawag kasi natin sa victim, di ba, private complainant. Tapos pwede siyang may abogado, private prosecutor.
That's right.
Magkakampi pa rin sila or magka-same side ni public prosecutor.
Yes.
Sa ICC, inihiwalay. At dun sinasabi ni Karim Khan, tingnan mo, magkahiwalay yan. And therefore, you cannot be part of those two groups at the same time. So yung ganung technicality lang, but of course what we understand as classic conflict of interest would be one representing the prosecution and another time representing the defense. Magkalaban talaga yon. Diametrically opposite interests. Dito medyo may technicality lang, magkaibang grupo, magkaibang team, pero medyo pareho din naman ang interest. In any case, nung naipaliwanag na hindi naman siya naging abogado ng biktima, sabi ni Karim Khan, at saka sabi nga namin, dito sa Pilipinas, hindi naman yan makikilala. Dahil hindi naman siya abogadong Pilipino.
Okay.
Kaya, nalinaw na, okay, noong una kasi parang may initial information lang si Kaufman, he acted on it already. Ngayon, naliwanagan na siya. Sabi niya, ay sorry, okay na pala ako.
Pero attorney, may precedence ba ito? I mean, historically, has this happened before na isang prosecutor ay pinipetition na ipa-disqualify?
Yes, there have been many instances that, of course, mabusisi dyan. There have been many instances that the prosecutor has been asked to recuse himself. Actually, more recently, Karim Khan was actually recused or kind of taken out of the case, the investigation in Venezuela, because his sister-in-law has represented the Venezuelan president now, Maduro, Nicolas Maduro. So, yung ganun lang na relation, hindi nga sinabi na nag-uusap ba kayo, magkaibigan ba kayo, baka naman hindi pa nagkakakilala itong sister-in-law na ito. Kasi nandoon siya. Yung sister-in-law niya nandoon sa Venezuela, siya nasa UK. Kaya yung ganung basis lang, na-recuse na siya or natanggal siya personally in his capacity. But in other instances, kumbaga, yun nga, maski yung defense, hirap sila na pagsasabi na this is the classic case of conflict of interest. Kasi defense and prosecutor ang usually magkalaban, hindi defense at victims.
Okay.
Hindi prosecution at victims.
Right. I was wondering, attorney, in the spirit of fairness, alam naman po natin na meron pong allegations against prosecutor Karim Khan, yung sexual misconduct sa kanya. I was wondering if this will affect the investigation itself?
The investigation and the case in the Philippines, I would think no. Because one, they have already put in another prosecutor in charge of the case, of the prosecution of the case, after Karim Khan left. So, Ma'am Mandiaye Manjiayan Yang has already taken over yung prosecution. Siya yung nagsubmit ng ebidensya sa defense, ng exchange and disclosure of evidence. Siya din ang gumawa ng pre-confirmation brief at ng document containing the charges. And secondly, since 2022, they have already disclosed this, since 2022, si Yang ang in charge or head ng Philippines Unified Team. And this is because the ICC has an Office of the Prosecutor has investigative teams, has prosecution teams, has lawyers, has investigators, has data analyzers. The Philippines Unified Team is the one in charge of looking at everything. And it has been Yang who has been in charge of everything. Si Karim Khan, nominally in name, siya ang lead of all the investigations and prosecutions. But of course, he has someone in charge. And that's Yang since 2022.
So ano yung pinaka-role, Attorney, ngayon ni, para malinaw lang sa viewers natin who are not so privy naman to the inner workings of the ICC, ano yung pinaka-role or function ngayon ni Karim Khan? Is he still the lead prosecutor for the ICC mismo?
Well, in name, yes. Until he is taken out of the position, he has a term of 9 years. It is an elected position, which is why he is still the lead prosecutor. Pero yung function o paggampan, that's a different matter altogether. We have yet to see if he will be, kumbaga, booted out of the position and somebody else will be put as officially prosecutor. Pero yung paggampan, hindi na siya talaga.
Okay. So, Attorney, an hour ago, there's a report here that the Duterte camp renews bid for ICC interim release to undisclosed country. So, may renewal of this request again. Would like your comment on this po.
Well, of course, as we've said before, we will oppose such moves for Duterte to be released in any country. Of course, subject to specificities. But right now, we are not aware or we are not privy to the details regarding his request. Merong grounds na redacted. At interesado kami doon, syempre. Because, well, if it's humanitarian or health-related, of course, well, hindi naman kami ganun kasama o kalangang bituka katulad ng mga pumatay ng war on drugs na hindi siya payagang pumunta ng ospital, of course. But within the context and within the framework of humanitarian assistance, we think that the ICC, detention facility in particular, is well capable of taking care of him. We've been tracking the statements of his relatives and they've said he's okay, bagaman payat. Okay naman, bagaman payat, glowing pa nga, sabi ni Madam Elizabeth Zimmerman.
Okay, so doon sa isang mga, di ba, condition po ng interim release, yung poses no risk, yung ganyan, di naman tatakas, etc. And kasama po doon yung wala naman siya may influensyahan. Kumbaga, hindi na siya ganun makapangyarihan. Pero do you think pwede pong gamitin yung archival ng impeachment complaint kay Vice President Sara Duterte as, you know, isa sa mga grounds po ng prosecutor na, teka muna, makapangyarihan pa rin naman yung
kasi
Duterte.
anak niya mismo, attorney, is the Vice President of the Philippines.
Yes, precisely. And there is a tangential relevance. Doon po sa impeachment complaint, huwag nating kakalimutan, Article 5 ay patungkol sa patayan at role ni Sara Duterte doon sa DDS killings. Kaya kumbaga, in a sense, the impeachment trial stopped that new avenue where evidence could have been brought out. So clearly, when you talk about Duterte, it's not just him, it's also his network and associates. That is what the Office of the Prosecutor has harped on. Sinasabi niya lagi, kung titingnan mo si Duterte, totoo, mukhang akala mo, kawawa. Pero, ang daming pera niyan, ang daming connection niyan, dating presidente yan, special friend of the President of China. Naalala niyo, di ba, meron siyang visit noon. At yung mga kamag-anak niya, how many Dutertes are in power? And one of them, no less than the Vice President of the Philippines.
Okay, attorney,
will
now
all be
given
taken into consideration.
Right.
yeah, given all that things that have been happening recently, September already next month, no? In a few weeks. So are we on track with regards to yung initial schedule or yung original schedule ng ICC with regards sa case ni former President Duterte? And ang tanong na marami, how long do you think this will take? An estimate?
Well, for us, on the part of the prosecution and the victims who have already complied with all the deadlines, we are ready for September 23rd. It's
Okay.
the time that the prosecution will present their evidence or their arguments about the case, and they have already submitted their pre-confirmation brief. Babasahin na lang yan.
Okay.
Magpipresenta na lang ng ebidensya. Kung hahaba yan, nakaschedule actually tayo ng 4 na araw, September 23 to 26, doon sa venue,
Okay.
sa lugar. Kaya, we have up to 4 days. But I would say minimum, depende sa bilis ng presentasyon, kasi magsasalita ang prosecution, pagkatapos defense, pagkatapos victims, I would say maybe 2 days, more or less.
Okay. So finally, attorney, we had former Senator Trillanes on the show a few weeks ago, and we asked him about yung mga possible arrest pa rin ng known personality. Sabi niya, it is possible within this year. Are you knowledgeable about it? Meron po ba kayong new information about it that you can share with us?
Well, again, we're not privy as victims to the investigation updates. At kung meron na silang warrant of arrest, especially if the warrant is under seal. But we would hope that for the prosecution, ako, ma-imagine ko, kunyari ako prosecutor, after September, nabuo ko yung kaso, na ikwento ko, sa pagdaloy ng kwento, mapabanggit mo kung sino-sino yung involved. He has co-perpetrators. And therefore, it is impossible for me not to imagine that this case needs to have all the other participants. So come October, I would say there will be applications for warrants of arrest for the other most responsible for crimes against humanity.
October,
Come October, we'll
Okay.
see.
I would say.
Kasi sinabi nito, attorney ni Senator Trillanes, possibly daw si Senator Bongo and Senator Bato. Is this consistent with what you're hearing?
Yes, Senator Bato de la Rosa has always been named in the prosecution's documents. Isa siya sa mga pinaka-responsable. Not only because he was part of the PNP, mas ganun ang alam natin, but remember that he was chief of Davao. And he was, allegedly, according to the witnesses, he was one of the core members of the Davao Death Squad and orchestrated the killings. Ginawa nila yung, kumbaga, template ng patayan.
All right, we will continue to get in touch with you regarding this issue. But for the meantime, thank you so much for your time, Attorney Cristina Conti, ICC Assistant to Counsel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ingat.
All right, in other news, the United States has requested the extradition of detained religious leader Apollo Quiboloy from the Philippines. Philippine Ambassador to the U.S., Jose Manuel Romualdez, confirmed that Washington transmitted the necessary documents to the Department of Justice in June. The DOJ has not directly confirmed the request, but spokesperson Miko Clavano said any move to extradite a Filipino national will undergo proper legal and judicial processes. Quiboloy, founder of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, faces charges in the U.S., including sex trafficking, conspiracy, and immigration fraud. Don't go away because we're not done yet. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching News and Views here on One News. Online gambling transactions nationwide dropped by 50% just days after the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas ordered the delinking of gambling sites from e-wallets. PAGCOR Chairman Alejandro Tenco confirmed the decline during the 2026 budget deliberations before the House Committee on Appropriations. Tenco revealed that 60% of online gambling in the country remains illegal, with only 40% operating under 70 licensed operators. He maintained that stricter regulation is more effective than an outright ban, warning that illegal operators will always find ways to continue.
Now, as the country marks National Breastfeeding Month, a growing trend is stirring debate. Some mothers are now selling their breast milk as source of income. But health experts are raising warnings about it. Para bigyan ng mukha ang balita ang Mobile Journal, Ray Vicente.
Maraming nanay ang napipilitan huminto sa trabaho pagkapanganak. Karamihan, pag-aalaga ang priority gaya ng pag-breastfeed. Pero ang isang mommy na nakilala ko, pinagkakakitaan ng sobra-sobra niyang supply ng gatas.
Di na bago ang istorya ng ilang mommies na hirap mag-produce ng breast milk. Kaya maraming active communities online kung saan nagtutulungan ang mga nanay. Pero may mga mommy na gaya ni Shane na ang sobrang supply ng gatas, kanyang ibebenta online.
Ang maximum ko weekly, nakaka 60 bags. Depende kasi sa sipag ko mag-pump pero madalas 60 bags talaga ako. Actually, meron na akong regular buyer talaga. Dati, nagpo-post ako sa Facebook kasi sa Facebook yan sikat yung mga pagbebenta ng gatas. Tapos hanggang sa nagkaroon na sa TikTok.
15 pesos per ounce ang benta ni Mommy Shane. Bilang online seller din naman siya, sinubukan niya rin itong ibenta noon pang 2021. Pumatok ito. At ayon kay Mommy Shane, malaking tulong sa araw-araw nilang gastusing pamilya ang kinikita niya sa pagbebenta ng breast milk.
Malaking tulong talaga kapag nakakabenta ako ng gatas. Ang laking niya, ang laking ang laking menos niya kasi hindi namin nagagalaw yung sahod niya. Minsan kapag nakakabenta nga ako ng malaki-laki, kinukuha ko yung pan-tuition ng bata, saka yung pan-therapy. Ayun, tas nakakabayad ako madalas ng Maynila.
At dahil alam ni Mommy Shane na baby ang may kailangan ng kanyang gatas, doble ingat daw siya sa pag-prepare nito. Sa katunayan, sumali pa raw siya sa lactation class para mas matutunan ang tamang pag-iimbak ng breast milk para hindi mapanis. Inaalagaan niya rin daw ang sarili at panay healthy foods ang kinakain para masustansya rin ang mapoproduce niyang breast milk.
Kung iisipin mabuti, maraming natutulungan si Mommy Shane sa pagbebenta niya ng breast milk. Bawat bag na naibebenta niya, isang sanggol ang nabubusog.
Pero para kay Doc Silvery Micah Jaime, isang general pediatrician, mas mainam daw na imbes na sa online, sa licensed milk banks dumiretso ang mga hirap magpadede ng kanilang babies. O di kaya ay gumamit ng milk formula. Nakakatakot daw kasi na baka makontamina ang breast milk kapag mali ang preparasyon nito.
Hindi talaga safe or hindi nire-recommend yung pagbili or yung pagbenta ng breast milk online. Marami talagang panganib yung pwedeng maidulot nito, lalong-lalo na sa mga premature babies natin and sa mga sick babies natin, yung mga mahinang baby. No, madaming panganib katulad ng contamination, possible contamination, bacterial contamination and viral transmission. Lalong-lalo na hindi na i-screen yung mga donor.
Pero kung di maiiwasan, payo ni Doc, kumonsulta sa doktor kasama ang donor para sa screening.
Ngayong National Breastfeeding Awareness Month, may dalawang muka ang istorya ni Mommy Shane. Una, lahat naman ata ng nanay malamang sa malamang ay handang gawin ng lahat para sa pamilya. At pangalawa, marami pa rin mommies ang hirap sa breastfeeding na umaasa sa mga gaya ni Mommy Shane. Kaya mahalaga po na mabigyan ito ng pansin at mas kilalanin ang sakripisyon ng ating mga supermoms. Mobile journalist Ray Vicente po, hatid ang mukha ng balita.
Smart has partnered with leading streaming services including Signal Play, Viva One, and VMX to expand digital content for its subscribers. Smart Chief Operating Officer Boy Martirez said the collaboration aims to democratize content by making it easily accessible on mobile phones at affordable prices. Signal Play's Gerard Milan noted that users can conveniently access the apps through either prepaid or postpaid plans. In addition, Smart launched a pluggable eSIM that allows users to manage multiple connections on a single device.
Democratizing content has two features: technology and compelling content. We made sure that our subscribers can watch it live on demand, on a mobile phone, at democratized prices.
It's a very strategic partnership with Smart to allow customers to be able to access itong mga apps natin, particularly itong Signal Play, no? Using their load or charge it to their postpaid bill. So it will really make it easier and more accessible for more Filipinos to access all of the content that we have on Signal Play.
One News Defense editor Manny Mogato has launched the second edition of his autobiography, It's Me Book. The details in this report by mobile journalist Kayla Macantan.
Pulitzer awardee and veteran journalist Manuel Mogato led the launch of the second edition of his book, entitled It's Me Book, at Ortigas Center, Pasig City last night. In his autobiographical memoir, Mogato highlighted more than 4 decades of experiences, adventures, and lessons learned from covering disasters, wars, insurgencies, and political events.
Second edition to, dinagdag ko na yung arrest ni dating Presidente Duterte and marami pang ibang details na sinama ko. Dahil hindi ko inaasahan na mahuhuli si Pangulong Duterte ng ganun kadali.
He said that he hopes his experiences will serve as a guide for the new generation of journalists. The event was attended by his close friends from the military, fellow journalists, and former colleagues. Also present was Defense Secretary Gilbert Gibocho Doro, who paid tribute to Bok Manny's colorful career and significant contributions to the field of journalism. He also mentioned how impactful Mogato's work was, not just to journalists, but also to future defense leaders.
Ine-encourage natin ang mga may karanasan at dalubhasa sa isang subject na isulat yung mga karanasan nila para may reference na gagamitin sa mga practitioners sa kinabukasan. Katulad nung kay Mr. Mogato, security yan. Importante na malaman mo kung hindi lang ano ang desisyon na nangyari, ngunit bakit nangyari, ano yung nangyayari noon para hindi cut and paste yung mangyari.
A short panel talk was also held with Glenda Gloria of Rappler, Perhel Santos of CMFR, and attorney Dana Patnak, where they discussed the challenges facing journalists today compared to their time. Mobile journalist Kayla Macantan, we are One News.
Now, today is a holiday. It's a Ninoy Aquino
Day.
Ninoy Aquino Day. So, mga tao nasa house resting. And with that, I'd like to leave everyone with a quote. A hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he is brave 5 minutes longer. A quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angelo Castro.
I'm Angelo Castro, the third viewer of One News.
All sides, all the time.